2007 marked a momentous occasion for the Transformers franchise as it saw the release of the first live-action film, simply titled Transformers. Now, regardless of your personal feelings on this movie and the Bayverse as a whole, there is simply no denying how much brand recognition the Bay movies brought along with it to the Transformers franchise. I was only 5 years old in 2007, and while I was a Transformers fan at that point, having already been shown the '86 movie by my dad, it was the release of the first movie by Michael Bay that ultimately supercharged my love of the brand and series. The 2007 movie brought with it more mainstream marketing than the brand had ever seen up to that point. I can vividly remember going to Kohl's of all places and seeing a big display with fresh toys and a ton of G1 as well as movie branded merch and clothing. I remember picking out a black Megatron shirt that I thought was just the coolest thing. If you weren't around in 2007, there's really no way to fully explain the marketing blitz that came along with this movie. By just looking through the few pictures from that time we have recorded, you can get an idea of the size of the marketing campaign. Now, there were many facets to the 2007 Transformers toy line. There was, of course, the fantastic main line of your typical Deluxe, Voyager, and Leader class figures, which I hope to make a video about one day also, once I finish getting the final few molds of that line that I still need. These figures were all mostly fantastic and had some pretty complex engineering, more complex than really had ever been seen before in the toy line. And they had some super fun and interesting automorph mechanics where you would sort of move one bit of the toy and it would kind of activate another part. This is sort of reflected in this other toy line I'm going to be talking about, but not exactly. Then you had your much more kid-oriented gimmick toy lines you'd expect to see, like the Cyber Slammers, Robot Heroes, Cyber Stompers, that sort of thing. And there were also these really interesting real gear robots that turned into actual household objects. But today, I want to talk about a toy line somewhere between these two types of toys. A toy line which seems to have been forgotten despite it holding some truly intuitive and fun figures that have yet to be replicated even to this day. This line was called Fast Action Battlers, and I think it's a disservice to the overall 2007 Transformers movie toy line, as well as the subsequent Revenge of the Fallen toy line. The Transformers fans seem to have completely forgotten about this toy line, as well as some of the amazing figures that came along with it. With this video, I hope to give you an overview of this toy line as a whole, give you an idea of its strengths, its weaknesses, as well as which figures stand the test of time and which ones are showing their age. The chances are you can find most of these figures for pretty cheap, probably around $10 each. I ended up picking up the majority of mine from a local toy store for all $10 a pop, and I'm super happy I did. As a kid, I had a mix of fast action battlers as well as the mainline toys. It really didn't work scale-wise, but I was only 5 at the time and I really didn't care. What I can tell you, though, is that I remember having a lot of fun with the fast action battlers, sometimes even more fun, because I could actually transform these guys without the help of my parents, unlike some of the more complex Voyagers and Leader classes. Again, I was only 5 years old, so some of them were a little complex. So for this video, I've tried to go back and pick up as many of the figures as I could, not just the ones I had as a kid, but all the ones I couldn't. So let's take a look at this line, starting with Wave 1, which includes Starscream, Ironhide, Jazz, and of course, Optimus Prime. The first figure I'll talk about is Ironhide. I have the Pulse Cannon Repaint, which is just a gray instead of black, but the figures are pretty much identical mold-wise. Ironhide is a good figure to start with because I feel like he represents the best and the worst parts of this toy line. I'll start with the good, in which I would say that he has a quick and easy transformation, yet it's still fun despite it being simple. These figures are more involved than your modern gimmicks toys like the one-step changers and whatnot. You do more to transform them than what you do now, where you just press a button and it kind of transforms it entirely for you. These figures do sometimes have automorph features, but typically they're fun and actually harken back to the appearance of the film transformations. With Ironhide, this happens with his chest and head, which convert from their recognizable shape from the movie to the front end of the iconic GMC truck, which looks great when it's fully transformed. Ironhide's articulation is pretty lackluster and will probably depend on your expectations on a one-step changer. I expect these guys to have pretty limited articulation, but thankfully the fast action battlers do have somewhat better articulation than the modern figures who have basically none. Ironhide can move at the head, shoulders, a swivel at the bicep, and has plenty of leg articulation and a spinning waist feature where you can sort of replicate a punching gimmick, I suppose, which is shared by many of the figures in this line. But the worst part about Ironhide is where his shoulders are mounted and how they're mounted because they are very easy to knock off, especially during transformation, and make posing him extremely difficult. Ironhide, like every figure in this line, has an action feature, in his case being a firing missile, which I unfortunately don't have, but I'm sure you can imagine how it'd work. In all, I think Ironhide is a pretty fun figure, but pretty fiddly and has some kind of jank to him. But ultimately, I think he's fun to handle, and I enjoyed him as a kid. Next figure up in Wave 1 is Jazz. Jazz and all the other figures in this line that transform into cars seem to typically have the most simple transformation, and he transforms pretty much exactly how you'd expect. The highlight is flipping his chest forward, which causes his head to pop up and his grill to pop out a bit to sort of replicate the look he has in the movie with his chest being pushed out a tiny bit, although it definitely takes some liberties. Jazz has pretty limited articulation since he has no head or elbow articulation, but it doesn't bother me too much. His feature is, again, a firing missile like the majority of the figures in this line. In all, Jazz is somewhat lacking, but his amazing vehicle mode, turning into the Pontiac Solstice, which is my personal dream car, makes him a worthwhile figure, and the smokescreen repaint of him later down the line really did the mold justice. Let's next move on to a figure that I'm most excited to talk about in this video, and that's Optimus Prime. For me, this was my childhood movie Optimus Prime. And while I always dreamed of having the leader class, I ultimately couldn't have asked for a better, more fun figure to have. While I have since gotten the leader class Prime, I always dreamed of having as a kid, and while yes, I love it, I can't say it would have been any more enjoyable for me as a kid. Let's start in vehicle mode for the fast action battler, because the transformation to robot mode is ridiculously awesome. The truck mode is alright. The worst part is there's nowhere to put his missile short of the front of the grill. You can cheat it, and I like putting it in the back to make it look like he's a tow truck, since the missile is actually a hook. The automorph is super awesome with this Prime. His feet spring out and form his grills, and his shoulders flip down once you snap his back into place. He ends up with a backpack, but I personally thought it looked neat and appreciated it as a kid, and I just imagined it was some sort of upgrade for him. His articulation is also stellar, and he's really a joy to pose. The only part that's lacking is his waist articulation, where he again has the action feature to release it and sort of replicate a punching motion. Without a doubt, I think Optimus is the best figure in the first wave. He was later repainted into an orange color scheme, which is cool, but I don't own that version of it. Interestingly, Optimus would get a completely new figure for the Revenge of the Fallen line, but I'll talk about that in the Revenge of the Fallen video. Optimus is an amazing figure that represents all the strengths of this toy line, and I'd recommend it to any Transformers fan, especially if you're curious about the Fast Action Battlers line. The final figure who rounds out Wave 1 is Starscream, and I think he's kind of a hidden gem, at least in robot mode. He can look deceptively simple, especially at first glance, but I think the more you mess with him, the more fun he becomes in hand. Let's start with the robot mode, because I think it's one of the more charming parts of the figure. His proportions are surprisingly good for a figure of this size, and he's got that unmistakable Babe vs. Starscream silhouette, with the broad chest, narrow legs, and the Dorito-shaped body. And I have to point out that I really like the head sculpt, which is somehow kind of adorable and strange at the same time. I don't know if Hasbro intended it, but it kind of makes it almost cute. And I really like art and aesthetic of the fast action battlers, making all the figures look more cartoony than their Bayverse counterparts. Later down the line, in Wave 5, Starscream was repainted into the Ramjet repaint, which is one of the coolest repaints in the entire line. His transformation is very quick but satisfying. Everything swings into place with the trademark fast action battler snap. You basically swing his arms in and it does it all for you. Now, the jet mode looks pretty good, but there's one downside, and that is something that all the Jets seem to have a problem with in this line, and that's you can clearly see his legs in the back of the Jet mode. There's really no way to hide them unless you put them underneath the Jet, but at that point, you would have to hide it with your hand or something. As a kid, I found ways around it, but ultimately it was disappointing. He does have an interesting action feature, though, because unlike the other figures with the swinging waist, he features a spring-loaded arm which can swing out and attack with a blade, which is a simple gimmick but also fun. I don't think he really ever used this blade weapon in the 2007 movie, but I still think it's fun. Overall, I think Starscream embodies what made the fast action battlers pretty special again, which is the quick transformation and the clever gimmicks, and a lot of personality all packed into a small and simple package. Wave 2 of fast action battlers was a smaller one with only two figures, and I think they both hold up pretty well. The two figures in question are Brawl and Ratchet, and both of these guys take everything that worked about the first waves and polishes it in new and interesting ways. Let's start with Brawl. He really holds up surprisingly well in my opinion, and is one of my favorite toys of this character. The plastic feels really solid, and the joints have the perfect amount of tension, and the overall build screams durability and something that a kid could handle very, very well. He's not floppy or fragile, he's a little brick of chaos, and I mean that in the best possible way. His articulation is pretty good, but could be a little better, but again, thinking in line with the modern one-step changers, it's much better than what we have now. His robot mode looks awesome. It's bulky, well proportioned, and has lots of that heavy armor detail that fits the character from the Bayverse movies really well. What's cool is that despite being a fast action battler, he doesn't feel super hollow and has a lot of heft to him. Transformation wise, Brawl might be the smoothest in the entire line. You just swing his arms inward and flip the cannon out, and everything kind of just clicks into place. Then you swing the legs in, and you're good. You've got a great looking tank mode. It's fast, fun, and really satisfying and intuitive. The end result is a fantastic tank mode that looks cohesive from each angle you look at it. And one of the most interesting touches in the figure is his accessory, which is a detachable turret that actually transforms. You can mount it on his back in robot mode and give him the back turrets that he uses in the movie, and they can transform and just become the missile turrets that he uses in his tank mode, which is really cool. He would later be repainted into the Desert Assault repaint, which I believe they also did in the main line, which swaps out the green for a tan and brown camouflage scheme. And it's a really cool look, and I think it makes the mold feel fresh again. Definitely worth picking up if you enjoy this line. In all, I think Brawl is one of the figures that embodies everything that was great about the toy line. Chunky, fun, and built to last. He's a great example of the fun and intuitive transformations seen in all of these figures for the most part. Next up in Wave 2 is that of Ratchet, who really stands out. He originally came in his typical lime green color scheme from the 2007 movie. However, I've ultimately elected to get the Rescue Ratchet repaint, which harkens back to the original G1 look, making him red and white, which I think is really cool looking, especially in the face. In robot mode, he's great and holds on to that stocky build that captures the character in the movie. His proportions are solid, his sculpting is pretty detailed, and he has some cool play features. He's got a firing axe arm, which is a clever addition and kind of harkens back to what he uses in the movie. And again, he has that feature at the waist where he's able to swing, which makes actually kind of works with his axe accessory, which can fire a missile, which I unfortunately don't have. The real star of this figure, though, is the transformation, which might be the most fun and interesting in the entire line. The magic happens when you spin the front bumper of his Hummer vehicle mode. It triggers an automorph that folds his chest and flips his head all right into place. Just like how he transforms in the movie, where the kind of front end of the Hummer kind of spins around. It's fast, clean, and incredibly satisfying every time. And all you need to do is flip the legs into place, and you're good. This figure is just so intuitive and fun, and again, I think a great addition to this lineup and looks great with the other Autobots. Wave 3 was an interesting one, as it included only Decepticons. This wave was a little larger than the last one, this time including 3 figures. Up to this point, the line had been pretty Autobot heavy, so going all in on Decepticons this wave was pretty cool and kinda helped even the playing field. The 3 figures included in this wave are Megatron, Blackout, and Frenzy, and they all brought something unique to the table. None of them were repaints, all of the molds were brand new up to this point. The first figure in this wave is Megatron. I have to say, this one's kind of a standout. This was also my movie Megatron as a kid, so he really is nostalgic for me. His color scheme is pretty cool, not very accurate to the movie, but has some icy blue and metallic gray that fits his frozen look from the 2007 movie that seemed to be replicated in most of the toys. It's not movie accurate in the strictest sense, but I think it's pretty cool looking, and as a kid, he was my Megatron, and it just worked for me, and kind of was a good in between the original 1984 Megatron and the modern update because he wasn't so didn't have so many harsh edges and pieces on him as the movie Megatron. Again, the fast action battlers were stylized, which I always appreciated. Megatron's play features were cool. Again, he had the spinning waist feature, but he also had some friction missiles in his arms, which were pretty cool. They don't work the best, however, if you hit them with enough force, they can go flying pretty nice. His transformation is quick and genuinely pretty fun. You pull up on his chest panel and his head tucks neatly behind the backpack, making him switch into Cybertronian jet mode and making it pretty smooth and satisfying. His nose cone also flips out from underneath his chest. It's really cool how it hides behind it and everything sort of flips in itself. Later on, Hasbro would repaint this guy into Night Attack Megatron, which replaced the icy blue with a sleek mix of black and silver, and it gives him a more sleek, interesting look, and was a cool repaint for Hasbro to give us. The second figure in Wave 3 was Blackout, and for me, I really enjoyed this figure. Even all these years later, he's really fun and I really enjoy the stylization to him. It continues that cartoony look to all the fast action battlers. His transformation is simple, but it's got that tactile and mechanical feel with some really cool automorph features that make the 2007 line really stand out. You just push his backpack forward and it folds his head into his body. You click the legs in the back and you fold his arms in and you get a really nice looking helicopter mode. He comes with some great play features and has that signature fast action battler waist joint, but also he has a missile that you could put in his chest to fire, which I unfortunately don't have, as well as a propeller, as in the helicopter blades in the movie, which can be left on his back, or you could put it in his hand and use it as like a spinning shield weapon, which I always thought was really cool as a kid. Blackout didn't receive any repaints in the 2007 line, however, he did get a repaint later on in the Revenge of the Fallen follow-up Fast Action Battler line, which I will talk about in the next video. But for now, this is the only figure of this mold in the 2007 line. And all in all, I really like Blackout, and again, this was my Blackout as a kid, and I really enjoyed him. Last but certainly not least in Wave 3 is Frenzy, who is a real standout in this line. He might be my personal favorite up to this point, and to this day, he's still the only transforming figure of this character that's ever been made, which makes him feel extra special as he's never really been replicated. Both of his modes are fantastic. His robot mode nails that spindly, wiry look from the movie, and aside from the big ring left behind from the kibble in his head, he's pretty shockingly accurate. Then there's his radio mode, which is outright one of the best alt modes of all time. Looks great, it's compact, instantly recognizable, and has an awesome play feature where you're able to shoot a disc out of him, which works in the robot mode too, and the entire transformation works around that play feature, which is just so awesome. It works in both modes, which is really just cool and made me always enjoy it as a kid. It's a really simple gimmick. It's just a friction joint. You just push it in and it shoots the disc out, but it really adds to the figure's charm. But I think the real standout for him is the transformation. It's kind of mind blowing the way his limbs all fold into each other and collapse into these strange segments. And then his head kind of forms into the ring part that I had alluded to earlier, which forms basically half the radio. Then you click the two pieces into each other and you just get this beautiful radio mode. It's intuitive, it feels like a magic trick in and of itself, and it's really just a perfect example of what this line does well with these smart, intuitive transformations that we haven't seen replicated in any way today. I think with the modern generations line, we can see some transformation cues taken from the mainline 2007 figures, but not so much the Fast Action Battler figures, which might be fair, but I also really have a lot of fun transforming most of these figures, especially Frenzy. Wave 4 marked the final wave with new molds for characters in the 2007 movie Transformers toy line of fast action battlers, this time ending with the pair of rivals from the movie, Bumblebee and Barricade, who I think round out the toy line pretty well and give us two characters that we needed to complete some sets. I'm honestly really surprised at Hasbro's constraint to hold the Bumblebee figure back until Wave 4. I'm shocked he wasn't in an earlier wave, but I guess this was before Hasbro realized just how big Bumblebee was going to catch on. So let's talk about the Bumblebee figure from this line. And I think he's pretty satisfying despite his very simplistic transformation. His robot mode is decent and is pretty basic and doesn't really have the silhouette of the original Bumblebee design from 2007, notably lacking the door wings, but I still think it's cute. I really enjoy the early concept art head of the Bumblebee that you can see on the original mainline figures as well. The transformation is definitely interesting, the way especially you fold the front ends of the Camaro up is especially, I think, strange, as well as the way that you fold the back in, which causes the head to go down. The arms are a bit janky to get in. You kind of just need to push them underneath the roof of the car and hope that they all fit and squeeze together. I think it's a little too fiddly for a fast action battler transformation, and it annoyed me as a kid, but ultimately, I really like the figure in the Camaro mode, and it might be the standout of all the vehicles in the toy line. His action feature is pretty typical, again, being the spinning waist and the firing missile, but I think it fits Bumblebee as he does have that cannon arm in the movie, and while I have lost the missile, you can imagine what it would look like. Later on, this mold was repainted into Rally Bumblebee, which swapped the muted yellow for a much brighter shade with some extra black on him and some racing stripes. This figure would also be re-released in the 2009 Revenge of the Fallen toy line with some very subtle differences. I actually don't have the 2007 original figure. This is the 2009 figure I've been showing you. However, the two are very similar. The second and final figure in Wave 4 of the line is Barricade, and he is the final new mold as well. And I think he is a pretty good send off for the molds of the line. Compared to most of the other figures, Barricade is definitely one of the more complex ones but he still manages to feel pretty intuitive and simple. His transformation involves a few more moving parts than you'd expect. The doors fold in just right, the legs tuck up neatly, and mine is personally missing the back wings that form the windows in the car mode, which makes for a cool effect. However, they're pretty easy to off and lose. The chest ends up kind of collapsing, and it all sort of clicks into place, although the back feet take a little bit of finagling into their place. But when all is said and done, you have a really great Ford Mustang looking car mode. I think it looks awesome and especially pairs very well with Bumblebee's Camaro alt mode. And these are two of the best model cars released in the 2007 toy line. In robot mode, I think Barricade looks fantastic. The proportions are sharp, the sculpting captures the jagged menace from the movie, and he has that sort of bow-legged stance he has in the film where he sort of has his back his back part of the legs kind of bend in on themselves. It's kind of hard to explain, but if you've had a Barricade figure, you kind of know what I'm talking about. It makes it a little frustrating to stand him up, but if you're able to get him standing, he actually looks really good. I again like the stylization on him, and his action feature is really cool. He actually has a mace weapon similar to the one he uses in his movie that pretty much you just pull out to deploy, and it has some spinning bits on it where the sort of mace parts can stick out. It's ultimately a fun uh, action feature, and I think he pairs well with Bumblebee, and they're a nice set to end the toy line. After Wave 4, going into 2008 to fill the gap between the 2007 movie toys and the 2009 toys, we got two more waves full of repaints of the figures from the first four waves. And these ultimately would mark the end of the 2007 movie's Fast Action Battler run. And while there weren't any new molds, I think Hasbro ended up keeping things interesting with a full lineup of new repaints. Each wave came with four new figures that are repaints of previous figures. Some make new characters, as well as some are just kind of different color schemes for the original characters. But I think it's a nice balance, and some of the color choices are really interesting and I think pair with the characters really well. Even though these waves were only repaints, they're still worth noting because they showed just how versatile these molds were. From the brighter colors to darker with the Decepticon stealthy variants, it felt like Hasbro was experimenting with ways to keep the toys relevant as the movie hype continued, even in a year where a movie didn't release. They might not have introduced anything brand new, but they served as a fitting epilogue for what had been a surprisingly inventive and fun toy line. Wave 5 kicked things off for the repaint era of the Fast Action Battlers line, and I think it's a solid mix of returning favorite molds and some new color schemes. This wave featured the Starscream in the Ramjet color, which I personally like because it gives us a new character in the line. The same can be said with the Jazz repaint, which is into Smokescreen, which gives us the slick blue and red color scheme. For Ironhide, we got Pulse Cannon Ironhide in the gray and blue color scheme, and Fire Blast Optimus gave us a red and orange variation of Optimus. I think each of the repaints brought something fresh to the table. I think Ramjet especially looked awesome with the bold color scheme all in white with hints of black and red. It really elevates the design of the Starscream in the original Bay movies. I think Smokescreen looks awesome, especially with the Pontiac car mode. I would love to see a Pontiac Solstice with this color scheme in real life. And then Wave 6 would mark the final wave of the Fast Action Battlers line, closing things out with four more repaints, and I think this was a nice wave to go out on. This lineup included Rescue Torch Ratchet, Shadow Megatron, Rally Bumblebee, and Desert Brawl. Rescue Torch Ratchet came with the white and red color scheme, which was a nod to the G1 character design, and is my personal favorite version of the mold. Shadow Megatron just gave you a black and silver variant on the Wave 2, or I'm sorry, Wave 3 figure, Rally Bumblebee featured a lighter yellow as well as some racing kind of emblems on him. And finally, Desert Attack Brawl gave you some cool desert camouflage, which made him look really cool, and it fits in really well. The final kind of footnote of the 2007 movie Fast Action Battler line is a special two-pack commemorating Optimus Prime called Hero for the Ages. This two-pack included a straight re-release of the Wave 1 Fast Action Battler figure, as well as a repack of a deluxe class Optimus from the Transformers Classics line, which was running around the same time. It was a neat crossover and gave kids and fans a chance to grab both a quick converting kids figure as well as a more collector oriented one in the same box, and it was a kind of cool way to commemorate the release of the 2007 movie. And that wraps up the 2007 Fast Action Battler Transformer line. Looking back, I think this toy line will always hold a really special place in my heart. The 2007 movie completely supercharged my love for Transformers. It made the brand feel larger than life to me, like something truly epic was happening in the world and culture. And as a kid, this was the toy line that let me actually be a part of that world. While the mainline figures were incredible, they were also pretty complex for a 5-year-old. The Fast Action Battlers bridged the gap perfectly. They gave me an easy, fun, and accessible way to dive deep into the movie versions of these characters without needing the help from my parents to transform them constantly. They were durable, playable, and were bursting with cartoony personality. Simple enough to enjoy, but clever enough that I won't get bored playing with them. Even now, all these years later, I can still feel that same spark when I pick one up. The satisfying clicks, the bright colors, the intuitive automorph technology, it just gives me an instant nostalgia. This line might not get talked about as much as the mainline movie figures, which is kind of fair. Those mainline figures have some marvels of engineering. But for me, this was the perfect entry point into the Transformers universe and a cornerstone of my childhood. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like. If you also enjoyed the Fast Action Battlers as a kid, or if you learned something new about the line and might consider picking some up, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. And maybe consider subscribing to my channel, as I do plan on doing a follow-up to this video where I'll talk about the Revenge of the Fallen toy line, which introduced some new molds, new gimmicks, and some really cool surprises. I hope to see you all in the next video. Bye!